Alright, so I just wanted to talk about 3 games I've been recently playing and kind of compare them and kind of go over them for the most part. And it's just like 3 of the ARPGs that I've been playing lately and having a great time playing. So to start, obviously I'm going to be comparing last Epoch, Diablo 4, at least the beta, since the game's not released yet, but we have a good idea of what the game's gonna be about and how that runs. And then Path of Exile. Just started playing the new league, the Crucible League. The video's not up yet, so I don't have that footage pulled up for the video for it, but I'm just gonna be comparing kind of progression and how it feels to play, and like gameplay and the skills, and kind of like the crafting in it, and how that all feels. I'm gonna start with like the gameplay feel. Like the gameplay between all 3 of them obviously is as ARPGs, the gameplay kind of feels all the same for the most part. Like obviously there's small specific differences where like PoE is generally just more difficult, granted, because your resistances actually play a heavy it's like a heavy part of the gameplay. It's like having resistances and kind of making sure you build those up. And then in Diablo 4 they have resistances, but again, like in Diablo 3, I'm not sure if it's not really do much or like mean much in the long run, at least as of the moment. And then in the last Epoch, it has resistances again. There's quite a lot of resistances in Epoch that you have to do, and I feel like they do play a heavy part in it, kind of like PoE, where like if you go against an enemy of a specific type and you don't have the resistances for it, you will most likely die pretty quickly if you're not prepared. And then like obviously there's no league or like season for last Epoch as of right now. They're still in the beta of the actual game, so they haven't actually released anything yet like that. They just released the online capability, like being able to party up and play with other players. Granted, my friends don't play it. None of them have it on PC, so it's not like I would be playing with them anytime soon to actually be like, yeah, it's okay. But and obviously I haven't really participated in trading. I hardly ever really participate in trading. Like even in PoE, I haven't really touched it. I lost my train of thought. Equipment wise and like affixes, Diablo 4 has its like basic kind of affixes that are more geared toward the skills. It seems like the last Epoch kind of took a portion out of Diablo 2, kind of like Diablo 4 did, where there is affixes that actually affect your skills that you use, like adding +1 to them and whatnot, which is pretty big for last Epoch, because compared to the other 2 games, like Diablo 4 has this passive like skills and stuff that kind of really don't do too much. Like the passive nodes just kind of add a percentage or a little bit to like whatever skill you're using, or just like your base damage. And PoE has like this whole massive passive tree for builds. Granted though, I feel like out of all the trees, like skill wise and whatnot, last Epoch has them beat. I really enjoy the skill trees. I find that like the fact that the skills themselves have skill trees, and then as you as well have 3 skill trees, technically as of the moment, 3 to 4. I don't have access to the 4th one on my Acolyte Necromancer, but you can choose 1 mastery in last Epoch, which is massive, because it unlocks another full tree for you to go through. And then once you select a mastery, you get access to the other mastery skill trees, but only half of them. You don't get the final like stuff in it, which is fair. I'd be way too broken, but you can essentially have 2 full classes and then half of 2 more as a in last Epoch, along with specializing in specific skills, which have their own skill trees, which is fantastic. And I feel like the I feel like that goes really well and works fundamentally very well. I haven't reached endgame with it last Epoch, so there could be more skill trees I just don't have access to yet, of some kind, but we'll figure that out. And obviously with Path of Exile, you have your normal passive tree with your nodes, and then your big node rewards at the end of finishing a node. Well, node mastery. But like a lot of the obviously little passive nodes, whereas in like last Epoch, every skill selection and every like passive point you put in generally feels good and adds stuff. There's a lot of building up to a good spot in PoE, like grabbing the +10 intelligence line all the way up until this node, because you need to get to this node, but it takes 5 levels to get to that, because you have skill spec on the other side of the skill tree, but you really need that one skill node mastery node. So like you waste a bunch of skill points. Granted, you get I think like 8 to 12 in the campaign, like a free skill points. And like obviously there's 100 levels, so there's like 100 normal skill points, but a lot of nodes, you know, take like 3 to 6 to select your mastery. So like I feel like the skill tree in PoE, like it feels good, especially once you get that node you've been needing and those small passive selections that you really want. But also at the end of the day, there's a lot of wasting skill points to get to a certain spot in your skill tree. Granted, you kind of have to do the same in last Epoch, but the difference with last Epoch is you're putting just more passive points into one specific passive and getting the bonuses from it, which is really good. Like as it builds up on a passive you've already selected, and you might want to go down that tree, and it doesn't feel like you're really wasting your your passive points on something that helps a little bit. Like sure, boosting up your intelligence boosts up your energy shield, and obviously your mana builds up your mana, but that's about it. Compared to when last Epoch, like each passive node on the passive tree boosts up, like I'm playing a Necromancer, well, Acolyte Necromancer, it boosts up my minion damage, my damage, their like crit, my crit, or it boosts up my health and my health regen, and then my minion health regen and my minion's health. Like it doesn't just affect like all the passive skill points just feel like they're worthwhile. And then obviously in Diablo 4 you have your skills, and then the like alteration passives to the skill, where like it adds bonuses or changes how that skill runs. And like some of them are good, some of them you can like feel like right away once you select them, but some of them also just feel like fucking pointless, that they don't really do too much and they just don't feel like good. And I feel like you probably will be spending most of your skill points just building up a skill, like 2 or 3 skills, and that's it. And in like Diablo 4, you don't have many slots for skills, which sucks. And the fact that your mastery takes up a skill slot, like on your skill bar for selection, sucks ass. It doesn't make sense why you can't have more buttons to push. Like even like there's no reason why you can't, because there's other games on console that are ARPG based that allow you to like hit your left trigger and then select between A, B, X, and Y, and then you have then your basic skills that are A, B, X, and Y without hitting the left trigger or the left bumper or whatever button they want you to push to select to get into the next thing. Like Path of Exile on Xbox has that. Why can't it be on Lost Epoch or Diablo 4? It doesn't make sense. And Lost Epoch, it makes sense that you aren't able to have more than 5 skills on your skill buttons because of the fact you can specialize in skills. You don't want too many skills that don't really benefit you at all on your bar if you're not using them. So it just makes sense that way. And then with Path of Exile, obviously you can have a bunch of different skills and whatnot going as long as you have the gem sockets on your gear for it, which is cool. And like you can have what I think 12 to 14 skills slotted for use, which is nice, and it feels good. And like the skills obviously in Path of Exile all feel good. Granted, there's metas, and some gems are absolutely useless to use because they go outside that meta or that build, that whatever build you're following on YouTube, which sucks. I feel like a lot of gems don't get used because of that. Granted, they're there for a reason. They probably do get used at some point, or they're a good gem to use until you get to the next gem, like tier of gems that give you a better main attack skill that you like. Like I went from Arcane, oh not Arcane Bolt. What is it? I forget the name of the gem to Arc. Oh, I went from Arc to oh, it's not Arc. Well, I'll just say Lightning Tendrils to Arc. Obviously, I needed a lightning skill that I could use for my my lightning witch that I was using. My lightning build on my witch, so I needed lightning main attack skill, so lightning tendril works, and then I went to arc because it did more damage and its functionality was better, and I use that. And like Diablo 4 doesn't really have that, and like for good reason. So they have like a few skills and that's it. There's no like skills that you build up to get to a better skill, or you use a skill in the meantime until you get better skills. And Last Epoch's the same. Like they have skills, but you don't get one skill and you don't fucking use that skill. You're not really gonna really change up too much. Or if you are using one skill in the meantime until you get a better skill, you're not specializing in it. You're at least consciously making sure you're not putting it in a specialization slot, so you don't have to re-specialize into a new skill and waste time building up a skill and then having to do that. Granted, respecking and whatnot doesn't really do too much. It doesn't take away, doesn't cost too much. It just costs time because you have to rebuild up XP. And then the leveling experience. To talk about that a little bit. Diablo 4 feels like Diablo 3 when it comes to leveling. Granted, I feel like Diablo 3 has way better in terms of leveling to earn skills, because you just unlock skills. And then you unlock the variations of those said skills. I like Diablo 3 a lot more in terms of why not, but Diablo 3 was really heavily built on your gear you were using and not the skills you were using. Because your gear just chose what skills you were using, because it only made sense to use that skill with that gear. Whereas in Diablo 4, you have to actively choose. Like, you have to build a build, compared to there's essentially builds laid out for you based on your gear. They kind of have that still in Diablo 4 with there's some gear, obviously that adds a massive bonus to a certain skill and not other skills. So you're going to be using that skill. Last Epoch, leveling feels fantastic. I was going over, as I already said, the skill tree feels amazing. Picking skills feels amazing. So the leveling experience feels amazing. You feel yourself getting stronger, compared to Diablo 4, where enemies were leveling up like one level higher than you every time you leveled up, so you were never ahead, so you never felt super OP unless you were playing a Sork or a Necromancer. And then in Path of Exile, leveling always feels good in Path of Exile. Granted, the passive tree both feels good and sucks ass at the same time. It's really big, and there's a lot of wasting skill points. But also, it feels good to level up, to get those skill points to build toward the build you try and make. Like, it doesn't feel bad at all. Like, too bad, and like, it doesn't take too long to level up. Between all three of them, it doesn't really take too long to level up in any of them. But I feel like out of all three of them, Last Epoch has the best leveling experience, and that's only because you actually feel the impact of the skills you choose, or like the passive points you choose, compared to Path of Exile, where you kind of feel it, but that's not really until you get the right gem build, the right passive gems that the best support gem build for those gems, the skill gems you are using, and the right gear, and the right slots, and the right link slots, and like, it takes a while to really feel super good. And then obviously Diablo 4, the leveling experience is like, okay, it's like not the greatest, it's not the worst, but it could definitely be better. I hope it changes, and maybe if it'll start feeling better once you reach level 50 and you unlock your Paragon board. But that also is not good at the same time, because it shouldn't take 50 levels to feel like the leveling is actually, like, the leveling experience is good. It shouldn't take 50 levels for that to occur, to where you're like, oh, finally, I can actually enjoy leveling. I actually feel like I have a good control, like, of the build I want. Granted, you have a good control of the build you want in terms of choosing what skills you use and leveling those skills, but that's about it. Like, the passives on the skill tree don't really feel that great. They do a little bit, they might add a bit to your build, but at the end of the day, they're like, you won't feel too strong. Granted, there's some classes that are way stronger than others and that are way better. Like, well, what is it? Whirlwind? No, not Whirlwind. Maelstrom or something does 17 damage. You know that whole meme. With the Druid, only 17 damage. Otherwise, that's it for leveling experience. Talked about how the game feels. You all feel like an ARPG. They all feel good. Feels good to pop monsters, and to meet like gory messes. Other than that, there's really not much to talk about gameplay wise. The story, I don't fucking pay attention to the story, honestly. Not too much. I just go through and play. Granted, I mean, there's some cool elements to stuff, like the time traveling is interesting in last Epoch, and then in Diablo 4, the whole conflict with Lilith and all the people being crazy is interesting. And then Path of Exile, you're trying to fight a god and kill a bunch of other gods. It's interesting as well. It's just, I don't care about the finer details. I'm more about skip, back to the killing. And that's about it. And then, I don't really think too much, like, endgame. Don't really know too much about Diablo 4 since there's no endgame stuff really yet. I mean, they announced that there's gonna be nightmare dungeons. There's gonna be little rifts that pop up and enemies pull out that you have to fight. The world bosses, obviously. I haven't got far enough in last Epoch to really know what the end game comes out to. I know there's dungeons. I don't have access to them yet because they require keys to run. I would imagine part of the end game involves that. And then in Path of Exile, I haven't ever made it past like the 7th or 8th act. So I don't know what the end game looks like. I haven't done maps. I haven't gained access to the Atlas skill tree, which I forgot to talk about the Atlas skill tree since I haven't gotten to it before. That's a whole nother skill tree you have to go through, and that's pretty much a skill tree more based on endgame content and how that functions and how it like you follow a path toward the endgame content you're most likely to do constantly. And that's kind of how the Atlas skill tree looks, like runs and whatnot. And then and then now with Crucible, there's weapon skill trees, which is interesting. And like that's a really interesting thing. Like there's a skill tree for now almost everything in Path of Exile. And like it's all interesting. You can build builds up really well and whatnot. Like there's a lot of build variety in Path of Exile, and the same thing in Last Epoch. There isn't really much build variety in Diablo 4. There's gonna be like 1 or 2 metas for every class, kind of like there's a Diablo 3. And that's only because of the gear in Diablo 3. When Diablo 4, there's only a few skills that actually do fuck all. Everything else, no. And honestly, that's all I really want to talk about is the skills and stuff, because like I just started playing the Last Epoch and I was just thinking to myself, man, this feels really fucking good to play. Like, I'm not tired of it. I'm not bored of it. I plan to play more of it. Probably tomorrow after I stream, I'll probably do a quick 30 minutes or an hour recording of some Last Epoch, and then probably nap or something. Whatever I plan to do. Well, I'll play Path of Exile, then sleep, and then wake up, and then do like a 30-minute recording, and then whatever. Other than that, that's what I want to talk about, is the gameplay, how it feels. I would go into endgame, but I haven't gotten into endgame in Path of Exile, and I haven't gotten to endgame in Last Epoch, so I have no idea how either one works, so I can't really compare them. Besides the tiniest bit of knowledge that I have, and then, but I can talk about the skills and the passive trees and whatnot. And I played a little bit of every class in Path of Exile in the past. I can talk about a little bit about that. I haven't played more than the class I'm currently playing at the moment on Last Epoch, so I can't talk too much about that. And then Diablo 4, I can talk about all classes besides Druid, because I didn't have time to go through and play the Druid during the beta. But Diablo 4 is definitely shaping up that ranged is the way to go for anything, because close combat, you just get utterly minced. But yeah, no, honestly, between all three games, I think Path of Exile is still my favorite in terms of like build variety and choosing a bunch of different things. And it just feels good to play. And then Last Epoch is definitely my favorite when it comes to the leveling experience and how those passives feel. And then Diablo 4 is I just like that aesthetic, and I enjoy Diablo 3, so I'm just don't play Diablo 4 a bunch. That's just kind of how that goes. I can't say whether I really like it or not, but I do enjoy playing it. It feels fun to play, especially playing with my friends. Other than that, that's about it. I'll catch you guys in the next video. Toodles.